There comes a moment in every person's life when their presence is no longer appreciated, when the things they gave freely are taken as expected and their efforts are silently dismissed. You show up, support, care, and give, but over time, they begin to assume you always will. That's when the shift happens. Not in them, but in you. The more you speak, the less they hear. The more you give, the less they value. You try harder, but they drift further. You explain your worth, but they ignore your voice. That's when you must understand this truth. It is not your job to convince someone to value you. It is your job to value yourself enough to walk away when they don't. And when you do it with silence. No dramatic goodbye, no long message, no angry reaction, just silence. The Stoics taught us that true strength is in self-restraint, that the most powerful response to being taken for granted is no response at all. Because silence is not just absence of words, it is presence of dignity. It is emotional discipline. It is the calm after the storm you chose not to start. It is the invisible mirror that forces them to confront what they lost without you needing to say a thing. In this video, you will discover the powerful Stoic mindset behind silence and how it teaches others the real cost of taking you for granted. Not through anger, not through revenge, but through quiet strength. Number 1. Silence is the weapon of the wise. In ancient Rome, there was a renowned orator and statesman named Cato the Younger. Known for his unshakable integrity and dedication to the Roman Republic, Cato often found himself in heated debates with his political rivals, who were known for their cunning and manipulation. One such rival was a man named Marcus Licinius Crassus, a wealthy and influential figure who sought to sway public opinion through forceful speech and flattery. One day, at a public gathering in the Senate, Crassus began a speech aimed at undermining Cato's influence. He employed every rhetorical trick in the book: flattery, sarcasm, and subtle insults designed to provoke a response. Crassus spoke with great passion, knowing that if he could provoke Cato into an emotional rebuttal, he could further diminish Cato's reputation. As Crassus's words filled the room, the crowd grew tense, waiting for Cato's usual fiery response. But to everyone's surprise, Cato remained silent. His face betrayed no emotion. He sat there unmoving, his gaze steady and unflinching. The silence that hung in the air seemed to speak louder than any words could. Crassus, growing increasingly uncomfortable, raised his voice, pushing harder to provoke Cato into a fight. "Why do you remain silent, Cato?" he asked mockingly. "Are you too weak to defend your beliefs? Or have you no answer to what I say?" Still, Cato remained silent, not even acknowledging the question. His composure became a quiet force that turned the tables in an unexpected way. The longer Cato stayed silent, the more the crowd began to notice something. Crassus, despite his words, was losing ground. The people saw that Cato's silence wasn't out of fear or weakness, but from an inner strength that made him impervious to petty provocations. His silence spoke of confidence in his own principles, and the realization began to spread that Crassus's words had no power over someone who had already decided to remain unaffected by them. In the end, Crassus faltered, and Cato's silence left a deeper impression on the audience than any argument could have. It was in that moment of profound stillness that Cato's wisdom was most evident. The wise don't need to engage in every battle, nor do they have to answer every insult. Sometimes, silence is the loudest weapon in the arsenal, a reminder that true power lies not in what we say, but in what we choose to withhold. This story of Cato the Younger highlights how silence can become a powerful response when confronted with hostility. By choosing not to engage, Cato used silence as a weapon of wisdom, showing the world that his strength came not from the need to prove himself, but from his ability to remain steadfast in the face of provocation. Number 2. Absence amplifies value. In ancient Greece, there was a respected sculptor named Pygmalion, renowned for his incredible skill in creating lifelike statues. He spent years sculpting a marble statue of a woman so perfect, so beautiful, that he fell deeply in love with it. He named her Galatea. To him, she was more than just stone. She was an ideal of beauty and perfection, and he longed for her to come to life. Pygmalion would spend hours admiring Galatea, speaking to her, and hoping that one day she would become real. Over time, he withdrew from the world, isolating himself with his creation, pouring all his emotions into the statue. As time went on, those who knew him began to question his obsession. They saw Pygmalion as a man who had grown distant, even mad, as he spent all his days with a statue, while the people around him, his friends, his family, drifted away. One day, the goddess Aphrodite, moved by Pygmalion's devotion and passion, granted his wish and brought Galatea to life. The moment the statue came to life, Pygmalion's world shifted. He no longer needed to speak to her, to long for her. She was now real, and her value was immeasurable. The absence of the statue's life had made it all the more precious in his eyes, and when she finally took form, she was more valuable than any other woman he had ever known. The absence of Galatea's life, combined with Pygmalion's obsession, created a space where the statue held immense value. It wasn't until she was gone from mere form and became something real that Pygmalion truly understood what he had in her. Her absence amplified her worth. In the same way, when something or someone is taken for granted, when they are always present, always available, their value begins to fade in the eyes of others. But once that presence is gone, the void left behind often makes people realize just how much they had, how much they miss, and how irreplaceable that presence truly was. Just like Pygmalion's statue, the absence of someone can turn their value into something extraordinary. When you withdraw your presence, whether from a situation, a relationship, or an environment, you create that space. And in that space, your worth is amplified. The absence reveals the magnitude of your value, forcing others to reflect on what they took for granted. It is in your absence that people often realize what they had all along. Number 3. Words can be dismissed. Silence cannot. In the heart of ancient Rome, there lived a man named Seneca, a philosopher and statesman known for his wisdom and clarity in speech. He had earned a reputation for delivering eloquent speeches and wise counsel to the Roman elite, advising them on matters of morality and leadership. Yet despite his influence, Seneca was often faced with those who sought to undermine him, not through thoughtful debate, but by casting aside his words as insignificant. One day, a young and ambitious senator, eager to make a name for himself, challenged Seneca publicly in the Senate. The young man, filled with pride and arrogance, began to ridicule Seneca's teachings, mocking his Stoic beliefs as outdated and impractical. His words were sharp, his insults clever, and the room buzzed with the excitement of witnessing a public confrontation. Many in the Senate laughed, eager to see how Seneca would respond. Seneca, however, remained calm. He did not raise his voice, nor did he attempt to retaliate with a clever rebuttal. Instead, he simply leaned back in his chair and remained silent, looking at the young senator with quiet, unwavering eyes. The room fell into an uneasy hush as they waited for Seneca's response. He said nothing. The young senator, eager to provoke a reaction, pressed on with his insults. Why don't you respond, old man? Are you so weak that you cannot defend your philosophy? Or are you too afraid to speak? Still, Seneca said nothing. His silence was as piercing as any words he could have spoken, and it carried an undeniable weight. The young senator's confidence began to falter, and the audience grew uncomfortable. Words, it seemed, could be dismissed, but silence was something else entirely. It was not an empty space. It was filled with meaning, a meaning that demanded reflection and introspection. The young senator's voice began to crack as the reality set in. He was not dealing with a man who needed to defend himself with words. He was confronting a man whose very presence and silence carried far more authority than any argument could. The longer Seneca stayed silent, the more powerful his position became. His silence forced the young senator and the audience to question the nature of their own words. Seneca's quiet composure was a reminder that words can be dismissed, but silence, when wielded with purpose and control, cannot. It speaks louder than any insult, and it compels others to reconsider their actions, their words, and their very assumptions. In that moment, Seneca's silence was not passive. It was a deliberate choice that spoke volumes. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to an attack is not to engage at all. Silence demands attention, it commands respect, and it leaves no room for dismissal. Where words may fade into the background, silence lingers in the air, impossible to ignore. Number 4. Silence is a boundary. In ancient Japan, there was a revered Zen master named Ryozen, known for his wisdom and the quiet strength with which he led his disciples. Unlike other masters who often spoke in riddles or gave long discourses, Ryozen was known for his almost constant silence. His students, eager for his guidance, often wondered about the meaning behind his quietness. They would ask him questions, seeking answers to life's greatest mysteries, but he would simply remain silent, sitting in deep meditation or walking through the temple grounds. One day, a young and eager disciple named Haruto, frustrated by Ryozen's silence, approached the master with a question that had been gnawing at him for weeks. "Master Ryozen," Haruto asked, "why do you remain silent? Why do you not speak to us when we seek your guidance? What are we to learn from your silence?" Ryozen, as always, said nothing. He simply rose from his seat and walked toward the edge of the temple's garden, gesturing for Haruto to follow. The young disciple, curious but confused, followed the master as they walked along a narrow path lined with bamboo trees. As they reached the end of the path, Ryozen stopped and pointed to a bamboo fence that separated the temple grounds from the forest beyond. "This fence," said Ryozen, still not speaking directly, "is a boundary. It keeps things in their proper place. It protects what is inside from the outside world. Without this boundary, chaos would seep into the temple. In the same way, silence is a boundary in our lives. It protects our inner peace, our thoughts, and our values from the noise and distractions of the world." Haruto stood in silence, finally understanding the depth of his master's silence. It was not indifference or coldness, but a deliberate choice to maintain a boundary, a line that should not be crossed by the noise, demands, or influences of the outside world. Silence, Ryozen taught, is not just an absence of sound. It is a deliberate act of protecting one's inner world, ensuring that one's thoughts and energy are not overrun by the chaos of external forces. Silence, Ryozen's silence, was his boundary. It was a way of saying, "This is where I stand. This is who I am. I will not let my peace be disturbed by unnecessary noise." In a world that constantly demands our attention and our responses, silence becomes a powerful boundary, a way of maintaining control over our minds, our energy, and our values. Through his silence, Ryozan showed that sometimes the best way to protect yourself is not by defending your boundaries with words, but by simply maintaining them. By remaining silent, you create a clear and strong line that others cannot cross. And in doing so, you protect your own peace and your own sense of self. Number 5. It forces self-reflection in others. In the ancient kingdom of Macedonia, long before Alexander the Great became a legendary conqueror, he was a curious and fiery young student under the guidance of the great philosopher Aristotle. One day, after a disagreement during a lesson, Alexander stormed out in frustration, demanding answers to a question Aristotle had refused to respond to. The next morning, Alexander returned, still fuming. He confronted Aristotle in front of other students, raising his voice. "Why do you remain silent when I ask for the truth? Do you think I am not worthy of it?" Aristotle, as calm as a still lake, looked at Alexander but said nothing. He simply observed the young prince's anger and allowed the silence to fill the space between them. The other students grew uncomfortable. Alexander's breathing slowed. He waited. Still, the philosopher remained silent. A minute passed, then 2. The silence grew heavy, pressing on Alexander like invisible weight. He looked around the room and saw the quiet stares of the others. He began to feel exposed, not just in his anger, but in his insecurity. His own words echoed in his mind. Why had he reacted so harshly? Why did he need an answer so desperately? Suddenly, the silence shifted something within him. Without a single word spoken, Alexander lowered his head and said quietly, "Perhaps the truth I seek must first be found within myself." Aristotle then smiled, still silent, but his eyes revealed everything: approval, pride, understanding. That moment became a turning point for Alexander. He began to understand the true power of silence. It wasn't avoidance, it was a mirror. A space so still that one had no choice but to face their own thoughts, motives, and emotions. Silence forces self-reflection because it takes away the noise people use to distract themselves. When someone speaks to you expecting a reaction and they are met with silence, they're left alone with their own words. And in that stillness, they begin to question, was I right? Was I too harsh? What am I really trying to say? In a world obsessed with constant replies and endless opinions, silence becomes the rare space where truth quietly reveals itself, not through confrontation, but through introspection. Number 6. Emotional discipline builds respect. In the court of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, there was once a senator named Cassius who envied the emperor's calm demeanor and rising admiration among the people. Cassius, known for his sharp tongue and political manipulation, often tried to provoke Marcus publicly, hoping to expose a weakness or spark a reaction that would tarnish his noble image. One day, during a heated council meeting, Cassius interrupted Marcus and accused him of cowardice for not responding aggressively to a recent military threat. "You hesitate, Emperor," he declared loudly. "Your silence and restraint are weakness dressed in robes of philosophy." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Marcus, anticipating a harsh rebuke or even punishment. But the emperor did not flinch. He sat quietly for a moment, then gently placed his hand on the table and spoke with composure. "Anger is not strength. Control is, there was no escalation, no emotional outburst, just stillness." His calm, deliberate tone made Cassius's anger appear childish in contrast. The other senators, witnessing the difference in their temperaments, felt a deep shift in respect. Not because Marcus dominated the room with power or harshness, but because he mastered himself. This moment revealed a timeless truth. Emotional discipline commands respect in a way no loud voice or flashy argument ever can. When others try to provoke or test you, and you respond not with anger but with steadiness, you display a level of self-control that few possess. It shows you are not ruled by your emotions, but by principle, clarity, and inner strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His life proved those words, and through his emotional discipline, he earned not just loyalty, but deep, lasting respect from friends and enemies alike. The ability to remain calm under pressure, to respond instead of react, is a rare and powerful form of leadership. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect you when you refuse to be controlled by chaos. Number 7. Not everyone deserves a response. In the bustling streets of Athens, the great philosopher Socrates often wandered barefoot, engaging anyone willing to think deeply. Known for his sharp mind and humble demeanor, Socrates was admired by many but also mocked by those who misunderstood him. One day, while he was teaching a small group in the marketplace, a brash young man approached him, shouting insults. "You pretend to be wise, but you're nothing but a fraud," the man sneered. "All you do is ask questions because you don't know anything." The crowd stirred, waiting for Socrates to respond with his legendary wit. But Socrates simply looked at the man, smiled softly, and returned to speaking with his students, completely unbothered. The young man, confused and frustrated, grew louder. "Answer me. Are you afraid of the truth?" Still, Socrates said nothing. Later, one of his students asked, "Master, why didn't you respond to that man? You could have silenced him with ease." Socrates replied calmly, "If a donkey kicked me, should I kick it back?" His words weren't spoken in arrogance, but in wisdom. Socrates knew something many people still struggle to understand. Not every voice deserves your attention, and not every battle is worth your energy. Responding to every insult, every provocation, every fool, only lowers you to their level. Silence in such moments is not weakness, it's elevation. It's a choice to protect your peace, your dignity, and your time. When you respond to someone who only wants to provoke you, you give them your energy, your focus, and your power. But when you remain silent, you make a powerful statement. Your behavior is beneath response. True strength is not shown by engaging every fool. It's shown by choosing where your energy goes. Not everyone deserves a response. Some deserve your silence, and the quiet realization that their words hold no weight.